Hey, Whitney, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Do you need me upstairs or are you good?
I am good.
Okay.
Mike. We talked, no, so the committee, we only have, we sent an email. Attachment, is there anybody who can, or how would you like to see for that?
Printing down here, have to ask Lori. We forwarded Lori.
Okay.
Lori.
Yeah.
The comment I sent, I guess a digital.
Start leaving behind for today's discussion.
I wanted to make sure you weren't caught. Yeah, unaware.
Hey, Kristen, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you, Nathan, already. Yeah. Red sheet, so I said, pull it up. All right. Something. Just want to confirm. That's it. Maurice was. Head of the table. Well, thank you.
Everybody else. Yes, he didn't send it to me.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is John Black, and due to some health issues, I'm unable to attend today. I'm fixing to go and have a breathing treatment. So Miss Eva, the vice chair, is going to be chairing this committee meeting today or this work session. I'll be listening in and trying to throw in any questions or anything that I have, but I do now want to turn it over to the vice chair, Miss Eva Prelude.
Thank you, Mr. Black, and I pray that you'll all is well with your treatments as you go forward. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 7th at 12:31. I will call the meeting to order. As I can see, we do not have a quorum to conduct the business session for the Transportation Opinion Advisory Committee, but we will move forward in the work session. Second on the agenda is the comment, and that will be presented by is it Jackie Bowers, but I believe someone else will be speaking. Oh, no, Miss Jackie, you're in the meeting. You could move forward with your report for the comment.
Actually, Miss Eva, that would be, Mr. Maurice Pearl is there. He will do the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Maurice Pearl. You could move forward.
All right, let's get these out. You work, yes, sir. That I have. Reps, there you are, sir. Thank you. There you are, sir. Thank you. There you are, sir. Thank you. Sir. All right. Well, is it all right if we grab a seat at the big table? Appreciate it.
Yes.
Madam Vice Chairwoman, I appreciate you inviting us today. My name is Will Brennan. I am on the Central Midlands Transit Authority Board of Directors, and I am the head of the 2040 Vision Committee at the Comet. We are very grateful for your time today to come and talk to you about what the future of our transit system can be and hopefully will be with everybody's teamwork. As you know, we are experiencing wonderful growth here in Richland County, thanks to the efforts of Richland County Council and its staff. So much growth that now here we are looking at the future of a new penny, a future penny, to keep that growth going. Before I hand it over to our wonderful Executive Director, Maurice Pearl, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Robert Morris. He is the head of our Finance Committee at the Comet. And Mr. John Fergus, he is the head of our Service Committee and Vice Chairman of the Comet. We have a wonderful leader at the Comet on the board, Councilwoman Allison Teresio, who has been very thorough in helping us develop this plan forward that we're bringing to you today. So before I hand it over to Executive Director Maurice Pearl, Director Pearl has been with us for about 7 months, and he has brought a wonderful vision of where to take our transit system. You're going to see that we are just the average transit system right now, unfortunately. But with the world-class growth that is coming to our county, we look to expand to be the best. And those projections and those plans are being put forth with the consultant team that's working with Director Pearl that our future transit system is based on. And he'll go into a little bit of those details. And those new details and consulting plans moving forward is the backbone for the funding numbers that we would like to take a look at with you today. So with that brief introduction, I'd like to turn it over to Executive Director Maurice Pearl.
Thank you, Councilman Brennan. We have five projects that we're looking at, and in conjunction with working with our consultant and based on past experience in other transit systems and the type of service that they provide to increase ridership, to provide additional service throughout the community, to be able to expand and make just a really good presence in the community. We have developed these 5 projects that we would like to present today. The first one is a microtransit service. That microtransit service would initially be located in the lower Richland area. And the service that is currently out there is a 2-hour bus route. And that's a disservice to that part of the community, to that section of the community. And we want to be able to enhance that and provide additional service to that area, in which we would work with a consultant to ensure that we have the right mix of service that we want to put out there for microtransit. And in addition to that, expanding on the second one, expanding throughout Richland County. There are other underserved areas in Richland County that we want to be able to reach out to and that we've had calls on or that we have had well, basically complaints about that we don't service this part of the community or that part of Richland County. So we want to be able to reach out and make sure that we provide that service to them that's being requested. And a lot of this, what's being presented today is it's essential to the community because it gets the passengers and that we transport to businesses, and it's hotels, it's restaurants, it's throughout the community that they are helping with the economic condition here in Columbia. So it's very important that had a meeting with Major General Kelly at the Fort Jackson yesterday, and he realizes how important that public transit is because he sees that the passengers that get off of the bus help support his base. And he's had a great conversation with him. So but we're presenting is for the community and to help enhance our community. And the next one, the third one, is increasing frequency on existing routes. We have our high ridership routes, which are our 01 routes, 501, 801, 101 routes. It has a high ridership, so we want to be able to increase frequency on that. Once we increase frequency on that, then we'll see additional ridership. And typically when you, and this is customary throughout the transit arena, is you increase service or increase frequency, and then there are more businesses that come along with that, along that service route as well. So we're looking at that for the 01 routes. The intermodal lease, our current facility downtown has reached its capacity, and we need to really look at what type of facility that we want for the community. So do we want that specifically for the common, or do we want to make sure that we incorporate other transit entities within that? So it's regional busing, it's potentially rail as well. So the intermodal facility is going to be integral into the future of public transit in Columbia and Richland County as well. And that reaches out to other areas as well. So they're bringing people in and taking people out. So the intermodal facility is going to be the backbone of the Common and Richland County as we move forward with public transportation. A BRT is a bus rapid transit. And with a bus rapid transit, that will have typically its own lane of traffic. And if it has its own lane, then there are less stops that are associated with that. Typically the stops are elevated as well for easy on, easy off. And it creates a high frequency. So even greater than what we're looking at for the increased frequency on 01 route. So it might be on the increased frequency for existing routes, it might be that it's down to from half-hour service to 20-minute service or 15-minute service on 01 routes, where the BRT is a 5-minute service or 6 or 7. So it's high frequency, and it works very well. There are examples throughout the other communities that have initiated bus rapid transit and how efficient and effective that has been throughout their community. And that
Before we jump into the numbers, I just want to make notes and then open it up for questions from the committee. The microtransit service, we we see the growth in every corner of the county. We want the connectivity from community, town to town, municipality to municipality be very effective and efficient. So setting up almost a separate bus connector loop in the Lower Richland area is very important to us as we see growth in those zip codes. So that is something that we look forward to. Blythewood as well. The connectivity from getting from one town to the other is very important. We don't want everybody just to come straight downtown and straight back out. There's connectivity points that need to be had in the rural areas of the county. We're going to create that connectivity points. That's the only other point I wanted to make for these four projects that we're excited about. Director Pearl's come at a great time in the growth of Richland County and the comment to see these pass forward. Are there any questions that we can answer for you before we move into the numbers? Any online? I guess that means you did a decent job explaining that there, Director Pearl. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So if you want to pull up the spreadsheet that we provided, and we can just talk in generalities about the numbers, and then the number that we would like as a committee to put forward for consideration in a time length as well. So Maurice.
Thank you. As we look at the spreadsheet, if we can go to the 61%
The
tab.
second worksheet at the bottom, 61%.
There's the tab down
I'm
at the
sorry.
bottom.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There we go. Okay. So currently the penny tax supports the comment at 61%, and that's a pretty high number. We realize that, and just want to make sure that we note that on here as well, because that flows into what we're looking at and requesting as we proceed through the project budgets. What we're looking at is a 6% annual increase on our budget, and that's based off of what our base budget is right now. Where we come up with 6% is that in order for us to replace an engine, for example, 3 years ago, it used to cost $23,000. We just got a bill for that, and that was over $50,000 now. So it has increased over 100%. Our parts have increased over 50%. Our labor has increased as well, and it fluctuates whether depending on the union environment, whether that's going to be 3% or it could be more. In a lot of the transit systems, it's 4% plus. And we annually go to a conference and they present that information to us. So the average has been 4%, and typically in some other transit agencies, it's higher than that. It could be 6 to 8%. So we want to make sure that we cover our basis going forward, so we don't look at if it's lower, that we put ourselves into a bind going forward, that we would not be able to initiate any of these great programs that we're showing everybody here and discussing. So that's the 6% annual increase, and why it is 6%. When we look at 61% of our budget over a 22-year period, that comes or equates to essentially 1.7 billion over 22 years. And if it's a 15-year, then it is 916 million. So if we go on to the bottom of that sheet down below, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. So at 22 years, we're looking at our total budget being, for that time frame, 3.2. So 61% of that is 1.6. So we believe that when we start working into these programs and start bringing them online, that we can have enough efficiencies within these 5 programs that we can get that down to 960 million for 22 years. Now that's being very creative on our part. It's working with consultants to ensure that we are doing our due diligence with our funding. And we believe that what we are presenting is going to be very beneficial to the community going forward, based on requests from the community and based on our knowledge of public transit in other communities. You build up your core and then you expand out. So this is what we're looking at doing. We build up our core, so whenever the buses come in through, as Councilman Brennan had mentioned, we want to have that connectivity going forward from community to community. So if we build up our core, and then it's just a flow, it's a natural flow going forward.
So we have it broken down there. If you're a percentage type of person, you can see the percentage breakdown. Director Pearl's experience in our committee and our commission strongly believe that we can get a world-class transit system developed, a continued world-class transit system done for that $960 million figure over 22 years. And that also includes continuing to look for federal grants, state grants to help us along. Yes, sir.
This 6% increases, are you all anticipating a fare gate
That's a great
increase?
So that is a great question. We are going to pursue free ridership programs to really boost ridership. So we're looking at workforce participation, seniors, families, educational partnerships. So I'll let you comment on the fare ridership as far as an inflation mark, but we want to keep our transit system affordable, if not free, right? And that's how we see the greatest growth to ridership and delivering to employers.
And to tag along with that, if you, the more we increase our ridership, the more federal funding we receive. So we receive additional federal funding. We have more to offset these programs that we're looking at initiating as well. And as far as increasing the fare, once you increase the fare, and the American Public Transportation Association has a lot of information on this. Once you increase the fare up a quarter off of what your base is right now, you actually lose ridership. And that ridership is estimated at about 3 to 4% per quarter that you increase ridership. So if we maintain where we're at right now, provide the service that the community needs and wants, then we don't have to look at a fare increase because we get that on the backside with federal grants.
Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Sir.
Any other questions?
You were going to explain the percentages out here, the 35, 35, 30. I'm trying to understand what those equate to.
Yes, ma'am. That's just a breakdown. So on the far right, Maurice, if I'm correct, that is a breakdown of what our entire ask would be at the funding level of, based off of $2.7 billion over 22 years. If you take the 60% market that, it comes to that 1.67 billion. I think we can all be honest that that type of ask can't come forward from the comment for this program to be successful as a whole. So our committee met and feel confident that rather than asking for the full tilt 1.369 billion, we would put forward for consideration at 22 years, $960 million.
Is having buses having their own lane, is that figured in this budget, or is that just something for the future that is not figured in this budget?
It is in the projected profile, and that is that will take some time to ramp up. Obviously, we have to coordinate with DOT. Do you have any good case studies you can talk about quickly that serve that?
I know Indianapolis has a BRT system, and they've been working on that. There are a lot of other transit systems that have initiated the BRT. And I can definitely provide that to this committee at the next meeting. A more of a breakdown on the communities that and transit agencies that have BRT systems.
But those have a significant decrease in run times, correct?
Correct.
So that's a major goal, is the effectiveness, efficiency, and timing of our routes. So that's one of the inputs to help us get to those better delivery numbers.
And with that, we'll actually have DOT funding also, or is that just basically county funding?
So we would offset it's inclusive within this, but we would offset that with DOT funding as well. There are a lot of programs out there that we can apply for to help offset the cost of implementing the BRT system.
We would work with the Central Midlands COG. A lot of that has a dollar match you have to do to get DOT greater funding, so an 80-20 match. So leveraging that type of funding outlet is what we would look to do.
Okay.
If I can add to that, the Charleston area is currently implementing a bus rapid transit system. And that project is following Rivers Avenue, leaving Charleston, headed up towards Somerville. And they're constructing 2 new lanes in the median of Rivers Avenue, and that project should go to construction in a couple of years. And it's approaching $1 billion construction budget, but Charleston is a couple of years away from construction.
How are they funding that?
They got a federal grant, I believe, didn't they?
Yep. Significant one.
The RAISE grant. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Director Pearl will be in touch as we move forward, and feel free to ask any questions in the future. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Executive Director Pearl and Councilman Brennan for and such a thorough presentation. The BRT was one of the ones that really caught my attention, and in knowing that in other areas or other states, I'd love to see the information that you'll present later in the week as it relates to the BRT transit system. Now, but my question is, would that gear more toward the city limits for the BRT system? Or would that route go eventually into the rural areas?
So what initially happens is we conduct a study on that, for the BRT system, to see which is the most effective and efficient to put in place. And once that study is completed, or during that process, we'll solicit a lot of input from the community and the leaders and committees such as this on what they would like to see. So if that is something that the community would like to see, then it's definitely a possibility that it would go into the rural areas if there's enough ridership to facilitate that expense. Yes.
Yeah, and I can imagine it would be funding driven that will cost even more than what we're presented today. So thank you so much for that. And it's good to hear also that the micro transit system will expand out into the rural areas. So I'm looking forward to more information to come. And again, thank you for the presentation. If there's no other questions, then we'll move forward on our agenda to review the resolution of the TPAC, and that's Parker Poe.
Is this the hot seat? Is this hot seat? All right, fair enough. We pass these around if I can. I'll send stuff down this way. Director Pearl, good to see you. Nice work. All right. Unless you're desperate to have one of these. There's extras. Madam Chair, can you remind me, this is Ray Jones with Parker Poe. Can you remind me how long y'all have scheduled for your meeting?
I wasn't given an end time, so but But
Perfect.
how much time are you needing to present?
We were gonna order dinner, so.
Oh,
And that. case.
okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I was just gonna take a few minutes,
That's a good.
make sure we leave, Mr. Beatty sufficient time. So just by way of reminder, first, just let me again, thank you, on behalf of all the folks, at the county that we're working with. So Parker Poe has been working with, administration and CIO and, county legal and the county council now on the penny for some months. And, so it's gratifying to see all the voices at the table, to see the work and consideration. And so what you have in front of you, really is your work. So you may remember that we presented to you this concept of, how the penny is going to be spent and how important it is to take all these needs that we're being presented with and to begin to filter them through some important principles. And just by way of reminder, one of the things we've learned, right, because this would be our second penny if we do one. One of the things we've learned is that this is an ever-changing environment, right? No shock to anybody who's lived for any amount of time that whatever plans we have today may or may not suit us in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. The other thing that we've come to understand is despite all the good work that's being done right now to identify needs in our community, whether it be from our friends at the Comment, whether it be from our friends at Stantec or the other municipalities and citizens that have brought needs forward, those are the needs that we see today. And these pennies, as you all know, they run 20 some odd years. And so what we've learned is there's a lot of new things. There's a lot of things that we haven't thought about yet. There are a lot of needs that could emerge over time. And so the direction from council in terms of how we have approached this penny and in talking with Director Maloney and lots of other folks here that are around the table is to try to design a penny program that, yes, acknowledges the needs we know about today, but provides flexibility to deal with those needs as we go forward and flexibility to bring in things that maybe we don't know about yet. And so in order to do that, we started with some big concepts that we're trying to work down to smaller concepts. So the big concepts are the long list of needs. So y'all have seen a very long list that you need a magnifying glass to look at. There's a lot on it. And what we've come to understand over the last several weeks is there are new needs, things that we hadn't yet heard about. We've had some great conversations here just in the last day or two with a couple of municipalities who've brought needs forward. And of course, now we have some real good data points from the Comment. And so we have this long list of needs. And I don't know about y'all, but you know, it's kind of like anytime you sit around your kitchen table and you start thinking about how much money you're going to spend this month, you know, there's always a longer list of things that folks want and need than there's money to pay for. Right? That's just the way that works. And so unfortunately, we're going to be, we think, in the same spot on the penny. There will be a long list of needs, but there's always going to be a limited resource. In our last work session with the county council, and I think some of you were there, but for those who weren't there, one of the things that was presented was some projections on what we thought the penny would generate. And those are educated projections. The county works with a financial advisory firm called First Tryon. They work with folks all over the state. And we went to them and said, folks, based upon what we've been doing, can you help us project what we would collect by way of, you know, a future penny, assuming it starts collecting in a certain year and assuming that we see certain growth in that penny? And Ms. Thomas very ably presented that data to county council. But what we saw was that over a 20-year period, we anticipated the penny would generate approximately $3 billion with a B, maybe 3.2 billion over 22 years. I think we projected if we went as far as 25, it was 4.5 billion, something like that. And so that's our limit, right? That's the best that the penny could do, assuming that it grew the way they anticipated it would grow. And so one of the decision points that the county council will be faced with as they think through and look at their portion of this task, which is to legally authorize this penny to go to referendum, is they'll have to decide how long the penny is going to be. And that decision has not yet been made, but just to give you those data points again, you know, a 20-year penny is roughly $3.1 billion. A 25-year penny is 4 billion and change. I will tell you that if you read through everything I've read through, you will see that when you add all the needs up that have been presented and you think about not what they cost today, but what they might cost 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what you end up finding out is that that list of needs costs more than what the penny is going to generate. Again, no surprise, right? It's just like sitting around your own kitchen table. So for that reason, the reason that we know that there will be decisions that have to be made as we manage the penny, we've talked about taking this long list of needs and beginning to boil it down. And we want to boil it down to a list of actionable projects that then fit within a list of categories that will actually be on the referendum, right? So we go from needs to projects to categories. One of the significant categories, of course, is the comment enhancement portion of the penny. And you just heard a nice presentation about that. There are two other significant elements of the penny or categories that we've talked about: community investment and county advancement. Remember, community investment are things that we're trying to put circles around and identify as things that impact the day-to-day lives of our citizens. You know, the roads that they're on, the sidewalks they walk on, the bikeways they ride on, the sidewalks they walk their children down, things that are in the community that are impactful on the citizens' day-to-day lives. The county advancement projects are larger projects. They could impact economic development. They could impact major corridors. They could impact high areas of travel. So maybe not necessarily just impacting one community, but maybe having an impact on the county as a whole. So if you want to sort of think about the logic behind the categories, it's community-based, county impactful, countywide, and then comment. And so the question is, how do we get from that long list of needs down to this list of categories where we're identifying some of the major projects? And that's where you all come in. And that's the work you've been doing. And I think you know this, but if you don't, your work is contributing to what the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee is doing. And both of your efforts are contributing. Each time we talk to the county council about where things are, we report to them about your input. So this is not in vain. Your voices are being heard and are being reported. And as you can see, there's lots of folks in the county here today. So we gave the Transportation Advisory Committee sort of a starting point on principles, because it's the principles that enable us to take this list of needs and get us to projects. And what are we talking about? We're talking about ways that we prioritize projects. We're talking about things like number of citizens impacted by a particular need that can become an actionable project. We're talking about things like safety, talking about things like areas in the county that haven't been touched, or maybe areas in the county where we could not get projects done because there was not sufficient money, or there were other obstacles in the last penny. So lots of different principles would then be part of a conversation. The principles that will come through this group, that will then go to Transportation Ad Hoc and ultimately will be approved by the county council, will be the mechanism by which the penny is managed after it's approved. So as I look around those in the room who are touching the penny, I see you, Mr. Maloney, and you, Dr. Thompson, and others. We know that you all need, a playbook for the penny. And, when it comes to when we finish one project, we got to start the next one. We got to figure out how we're going to do that. There's two approaches to that. I will tell you that the original approach was, let's sit down and put everything in rank order today. I would say that's very much the old way of doing this. If you look at all the pennies that are being discussed right now around the state, which would include Berkeley County, Dorchester County, Charleston County, Beaufort County, and Horry County, and Richland, they're all taking a different approach. And that approach is to identify major projects that we anticipate will be done, but leave room for prioritization in accordance with principles as we go forward. Why? Because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what it's going to be like in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And so rather than having a rote list of priorities, we're attempting to create a program that is manageable, that is flexible, and that can adjust as conditions adjust. To that end, you all were very kind to give us some comments on the principles, and they were very helpful. We appreciated the input very much because it reflects the kind of thought and input that County Council needs and Transportation Ad Hoc needs. And so what we've done and what I've handed out is really what we call a red line. So it shows all the changes made from the first draft to this draft. I see some of my lawyer brethren around the table, one of whom was kind to provide us with track changes. So he's familiar with the red line. Thank you, Mr. Brown. And so we began to incorporate your thoughts into these principles. So I wanted to just show you a few things that are happening in the principles. I wanted to share with you a few things that came out of the last county council work session, and then let you know what we anticipate will be happening sometime next week when we get to second reading. So those are the three things I'd like to hit, and then I'll be quiet and I'll hand Mr. Beatty the floor. Does that suit everybody? And Ms. Prelo, I'm very sorry I don't have a copy of this sitting in front of you, but I'll make sure you get one emailed to you.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I grabbed my technology here and it's like, where's the copy? I don't see it. So thank you for it.
No problem. And I'm going to hit the high points. I think you'll get the gist of where we are.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the things we've done in the principles, and again, this will continue to change and evolve. We don't anticipate these will be quote final until late June, early July. So we still have time to work on these. So we're trying to recognize first that there are a number of needs that are starting to flow toward this committee and toward council. And we're trying to take all those needs and at least acknowledge that we've got some current needs that are part of the transportation needs assessment. We've got some needs that have been presented to us that still need to be thought through, whether they're going to be added to that needs assessment, whether they'll be separately dealt with, or how that's going to be approached. And then we have our future needs, the things that we haven't yet discussed because we don't know exactly what they are. And so all of those needs are designed to be addressed. And so you'll see in the first paragraph, we talk about how current needs become projects. This is where we apply the principles that you all are suggesting. There's been some, I think, very helpful suggestions made. One very much helpful suggestion is that if a project has other funding that could help get it done, and if we can put up matching money to ensure it gets done within a certain time, that needs to be a critical item that's considered so we don't lose matching money. Some of that feedback came from this committee. The other elements that came from this committee are reflected in the red line, and I'll just go through a few of them. One is sort of a mathematical approach, how many residents are being impacted, what the cost ratio is of a particular project. And we have some questions about how that might be calculated, but the idea, I think, is sort of what's the cost versus the number of people it's serving. The safety factors that have been included in this document are still here. We want to make sure that projects or needs that could be critical to ensuring a reduction of injury in a particular intersection, for instance, that they're being addressed. There was a suggestion that the removal of blight also be a principle that's discussed. And there are a number of other items here. As you can imagine, not only do we need to settle on what the principles are, but at some point we need to have some sense from this committee on how you would prioritize them. In order to make the principles actionable, we can't assign the same weight to every principle. We need to make some determination. For instance, if we say, and I'm not suggesting it is, but by way of example, if this committee said, we, the TPAC, believe that safety is paramount, and therefore that's the number one principle that must be applied, then we would just like this committee to make a suggestion to us about how you would rank the principles. So that would be our next step in this process. And to the extent you have anything new you want to incorporate, for instance, we recognize that there are now a number of needs that are coming to us from third parties, to include municipalities, to include the state. So it would be good, I think, that one or more of the principles address those needs. For instance, if the committee finds it's important to ensure that a certain number of major projects presented by each municipality have been addressed, then we need to know that. Or if the committee finds it important that if DOT has left a particular road, deferred maintenance on it for years and years and years and years and years, and has highlighted it as an item that is in, a high scoring item in their system. And if that's important to this committee, then we need to know that. So we need your help there. We need your help settling on the principles, and we need your help ranking the importance of the principles, because again, all of that will go forward for conversation at the ad hoc committee. And ultimately, we envision the document that's in front of you, once it's all nice and put together and pretty, will be voted on and approved by the county council by resolution, right? So it's something they can continue to work through. Was there a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, we have a question from Chairman Black.
Sorry, I'm
Chairman Black.
getting unmuted. Just for clarification purposes, can you please explain earlier when you talked about the community investment versus like the county investment and then the comment. I think previously that was kind of mentioned as a 40-40-20 split. But I know recently in a couple meetings with the city, they seem to have the interpretation that 40-40-20 split is 40% county projects, 40% City of Columbia projects, and 20% comment. Can you just clarify or, educate us if that is the deal or not? Because it was kind of a shock to me when I heard that. I was just kind of dumbfounded because through all our meetings and whatnot through this, I'd never heard that before. Thank you.
I sure can. And if you'll just give me 1 second, when I get to the point of the decisions that county council is making, that'll be one of the issues, one of the items. So if you'll give me just a minute, I will get right back to that, Mr. Black, and I hope you're feeling better. The other thing I just wanted to point out to you in the principles is there are 2 things that are here that are coming from our council work session input. And so under items 2 and 3 of the principles, which remain to be filled in, I point out, council wants to make sure that there's going to be a clear mechanism to identify emerging needs. So things that could occur in the future that we've yet to identify. They want a clear path on how that's going to be identified. What kind of principles will be applied? Is it going to be the same principles? What will the procedure be? And then we also anticipate that there are going to be some administrative principles here. And so I'm going to give you some examples of items that could qualify as administrative principles, recognizing that neither the Transportation Ad Hoc nor the County Council have voted on any of this, but these are items they've asked us to start incorporating within these. So the management of the new penny principles, I think, encompass several things. One is just regular reporting, which is going on now, but the nature of the reporting, what needs to be in the reporting, and the specific item that was highlighted at the work session was making sure that council and members of the community are aware if there is a major project that was intended to be undertaken but can't be undertaken for whatever reason, whether it be inability to get an easement, maybe it was conditioned on getting federal match money for whatever reason that didn't come through, highlighting those items so that it's clear to the citizens if projects have been identified as major, if they cannot go forward, making sure people understand what's happening. The second thing is ensuring that council members have a voice in being able to bring forward emerging needs within their districts on a go-forward basis. And so those are 2 items that we anticipate we will be addressing in the principles in terms of how they're managed. And of course, we're going to talk with folks around the table about those as well to make sure that we don't handcuff anybody, but to make sure that we have a 2-way dialogue going on about the new penny as we move forward. Much of which is already happening, but we may add some additional elements to that. So those are both things that have come directly from the county council. The final thing I want to point out to you before I address Mr. Black's question, if you'll turn with me to Exhibit C. Exhibit C is where we take our major projects and we put them into project categories. And we've added some additional language here to make it clear about what that's going to look like. And to now specifically address your point, Mr. Black, at no point during the conversations I've been involved in has there been a line of demarcation drawn between county projects and city or anybody else's projects. It's intended that community investment projects include projects that could be impactful within the county proper and projects that could also be impactful within the municipalities within the county to the extent that they qualify. And it's the same for county advancement projects. County advancement projects are intended to have a county-wide impact and by definition would touch parts of the county that would be inclusive of municipalities. So to the extent that is a just kind of a break in the informational chain, Mr. Black, we will work hard to fill that in with folks. But just to be clear, it's not intended that community investment and county advancement means city versus county projects. It's intended that both categories would include both types of projects. The other question you raised was about the split. The split that was present in the ordinance, which was at first reading in in April, which was really just there to generate conversation, showed 40% to community improvement projects, 40% to county advancement projects, and 20% to the comment. We full well expect that the county council will have a deeper conversation about that at second reading on May 14th. County Council will also be looking at this particular exhibit, which is also an exhibit to the ordinance, where we start to sort of fill in what the major projects are under each of these. And I suspect we'll also have a conversation about the duration of the penny that council wants to select. So again, council has the opportunity. They can go anywhere from 1 year to 25 years. It's up to them. And so that conversation needs to be had to make it, because once we know how much money we have, then I think that'll be part of setting expectations for everybody that's participating. So, Madam Chair, that's all I have. Thank you for your attention. Mr. Black, I hope I answered your questions, and let me just stop there.
Yes,
Okay,
sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Tonight doesn't appear to have any other questions. And thank you again for your updates. We appreciate that. We will now move forward to review of project needs, and that's under Santec. Santec, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm David Beatty with Santec Consulting, and I've got a hard copy of a previously provided document dated March 4th. And it is the Transportation Needs Assessment as of March 4th. Like everything else we do, talking about projects or costs, it is a snapshot in time of that date. And really what I want to do is provide a very brief summary of the needs and then make myself available for any questions or conversation. So to identify the transportation needs assessment, Stantec compiled existing plans from the county, Central Midlands. We solicited input from municipalities as well as the SCDOT. We visited all 11 council districts with a series of public meetings soliciting public input, which resulted in this needs assessment dated March the 4th. Stantec then went and assigned a cost estimate to each project type using 2024 dollars. And then we inflated each project for design, right-of-way acquisition, utilities, and construction management. And so in 2024 dollars, that total cost estimate was just over $2 billion. And again, that was as of March 4th and as of this particular list of projects. And it's very important to point out that this 2.1 billion does not include COMET funding, and it is in 2024 dollars. So to implement these projects over an unknown amount of time, whether it's 15, 20 years, then of course these numbers would have to be inflated to match that time frame. So really, that's kind of a summary of where the transportation needs assessment is as of March the 4th, how the costs came up to about 2.1 billion in present day dollars. Now, we did include a couple of categories for dirt road paving, resurfacing, and also a sidewalk program in general. And in those numbers, we just estimated as a discussion point, 100 million for resurfacing, 100 million for dirt road paving, which these numbers are about double what's in the current penny. And then lastly, we put in about 50 million for the sidewalk category. So with that, Chairwoman, I'll close my presentation and update and open the floor to any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions?
I'd just say it'd be okay for you to update the list to include all the prior penny projects, putting this more through the 2.4.
Okay, all right. So we'll revise the list to include that.
And I know there was some conversation about a deadline for additional projects. Eddie?
I'm not certain that there was a hard deadline. We had advertised to the public a comment period.
Right.
Again, just to get the public's comments. But to this point, I'm not certain that council is accepting or rejecting any additional projects. I'm sure they're continuing to take input.
Mr. Brown. And Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, if you if you will recognize me, Leonardo Brown, County Administrator, I'll kind of answer your question a little bit more directly and provide an update that I received
Oh,
yesterday
yes.
from the city of Columbia that I think will be helpful for you to be aware of. So great job, Mr. Beatty. You're correct. County Council, through the process of procuring Stantec, provided a scope of work that it included a needs assessment with a deadline for them to bring back that feedback for the purpose of what you're looking at now. County Council, through all of its processes, will always continue to take public input. So there'll be a public hearing, there's opportunities each council meeting for public input, and how council members take and receive that information individually is certainly, up to them. But there is not another process by which, you're just submitting requests until the end, because that you won't really have a way to get something before the public that they can generally understand and fully grasp. And I don't think that'll be fair to the public. But yes, you can provide input to council members just like you always can. And our council has made it very clear they want public input, and that's a part of their process. I did receive some information on yesterday, and I think it's only important because reflected in our needs assessment was an initial item that we received from the city of Columbia. But yesterday they provided kind of an update, if you will. So for example, in the list that you're looking at, I think it has the Assembly Rail project listed at $300 million. They've come back and said their true ask is 25 million, which represents the match that they would need to pursue other funding to make that project work. So that's just an example of, an update. So what you presented at the time was something that we did receive from the city, but they have provided some updates to their original submission that represents their council action. So there may be some things that just over time that we'll continue to see that will be addressed. But again, fundamentally, this does come from the scope of work that was procured through Stantec. And it's not just kind of an open free-for-all. It was a specific target that the council needed as a base to begin to try to make decisions. So hopefully that's not too convoluted, Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Chair. But that certainly is a response to that question and an update to that list that you have.
Okay, thank you for that update, Administrator.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Anyone else have any input as it relates to this transportation needs assessment? One of the areas I'd like to draw your attention to is the resurfacing and the dirt road paving. That right now the projected cost is 100 million split. Now I realize that that's a projection. I'm curious is Director Maloney in the meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Director Maloney, what's your input as it relates to the projection? I'm just curious to see if there would be more discussion on those projected numbers for resurfacing and dirt road paving at 100 mil.
Yes, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, this is based on what the needs analysis was initially embarked on, which was David, I think we were at 15 years. So we were basing it on a limited period of time that may change. And it's also based on a estimate of, with consent denials, a percentage of consents being in the 80% mark. So no, it doesn't, for instance, pave all dirt roads. That would be a number closer to $250 million, but it's based on what's remaining and the time we would have to get that done. And then what percentage of those that would be on a list would be proceeding with consent.
Okay, all right. I just, in looking at that and in understanding and involves some direct and indirect with the dirt road and resurfacing, I just thought that was a low number. But again, you're the expert, so I'll have to lean toward your evaluation of the number. And if that's if that's a good number, then I'll have to take that as what's presented current. But yes, we would definitely like to see an update on the transportation needs assessment so we could have more accurate numbers to see where we are with it prior to the next meeting.
Madam Vice Chair, I have to correct my last remark too. That was based on 12 years.
12. Okay.
So if it were, what we could do is from our staff could provide say 15, the numbers that we're now seeing, 15 and 20 and 25, and just show that as far as programmatic costs in there.
Okay, yeah, and where I'm leaning to with this, knowing that the growth of development is happening and infrastructure development would be a demand. Perhaps if that hadn't been considered in the number, that might be something you would want to consider, because I know that there are a large need for infrastructure development, resurfacing, as well as paving of dirt roads to improve the flow of traffic and some of the other things as it relates to resurfacing and infrastructure improvement. So that was part of where I was leaning toward the numbers, that it may be low, but again, if it changes, I'm sure it's not going to decrease. If anything, it may, perhaps will increase in the projections.
I think so. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
So the penny tax budget, that is, we're looking at, how is that compared to the normal budget that the county had for that is not figured into the transportation penny tax? For daily, everyday, normal transportation, county transportation project.
There is a road maintenance fund that does handle routine maintenance and is designed to do that. We cannot put routine maintenance into the penny, so there is that split. There is some overlap on resurfacing. We tend to do much bigger programmatic work with the penny. Our available capital year to year to do major maintenance, for instance, capital maintenance in our budget is considerably less than this. It's couple $1 million.
Yeah, and Madam Vice Chair Leonardo Brown, let me recognize again, please.
Yes, you may.
So just to make sure that we don't, so this is one of the areas that's really going to be important as both for TPAC, and I'm saying for TPAC because the county is kind of going through this process, is that we're going to have to get a handle around what are eligible and ineligible costs that can be spent using transportation sales tax dollars. So there are some things that I know right now that some of our municipalities, maybe other organizations believe that would be good projects. And I'm not saying that they would not be, but they may not be eligible based off what the Department of Revenue considers an appropriate project to be utilized for transportation sales tax dollars. So when you ask about the county's routine budget, it's important to understand that anything the county can do with its routine budget, the Department of Revenue would generally say that that is considered maintenance, and you cannot use the transportation sales tax dollars to do maintenance. So any projects that are maintenance related projects, any things that are not considered more capital, more not to try to put everything in one box, but more like significant road repairs that may call more like rebuilds, more than just putting a new top on the road. Those things would need to be what the penny sales tax can be used for, related to road construction and things of that nature, as opposed to maintenance, like putting down a seal coat on top of a road that's already has a surface because you want the road to last a few extra years. That will be looked at more as maintenance and not as a capital project that will fall under Department of Revenue's guidelines for transportation sales tax dollars. So not to get too much in the weeds, but that conversation is one where you would not want to say we're going to supplant one for the other because you can't.
I'll just, as a layman, I'm looking at the dollar number. What is the figure normally that the county collect for the transportation maintenance that is have nothing to do with the penny tax?
The road user fee roughly is about $6.5 million.
Okay. That kind of help us understand the difference between the two.
Understood. Great question, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Administrator Brown, for that update as it relates to routine maintenance and larger projects. That's very good, helpful information to know and to have and to understand. So again, I appreciate you bringing in that additional information. Chairman Black, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Beatty with Stantec and Mr. Jones with Parker Poe, because they have been carrying a large burden on their shoulders, and with all of the last minute stuff that gets thrown at them and thrown at them and thrown at them. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank y'all again. And I know last week we had a bunch of curveballs thrown in again that kind of hit hard from one of the municipalities. Something that Administrator Brown had mentioned about the DOR guidelines. Is that too far in the weeds, as you put, for us to consider, or even is that something that we should have a copy of to look at when we're looking at this stuff? Or is that just like too far out of the realm or in the weeds for us?
So I think I would like Mr. Jones to comment on that, but I think in terms of parameters that you put in, maybe that's one of those, larger principles that you might want to consider, but do you mind addressing that, sir?
No, not at all. So if you look at the revised version of the principles that we showed you today, one of the things it talks about is compliance with all applicable laws, guidelines, et cetera, including the particular revenue ruling from the Department of Revenue that calls out what you can spend transportation penny on. It's revenue ruling 22-2. So I don't think necessarily you all have to make determinations about that, but we've made it clear that one of the principles of managing the program will be we spend the money in accordance with that. Does that make sense, Chairman Black?
Yes, sir. I was just, because one of the things that come up from the city of Columbia, they've got their own new separate list that they are referring to as programs now instead of projects. And a bunch of those programs, as they have submitted, have maintenance, annual maintenance fees attached to that. So, that's kind of one of those things where I don't know if we need to have a separate meeting or something so we can get everybody on the same page with that. But yeah, it's just frustrating because it seems to be when the city appointees, when we had our meeting with the city last week, or it might have been the week before last, it seemed to be some confusion of what they believed things were versus what we've always been told. So it's just, I think somewhere there's some lines crossed that we need to kind of make sure we get straight right away.
Yes, sir. Chair Black, this is Leonardo Brown again.
Yes, sir.
We did have an opportunity to sit down with the city, and I think as we go through this process, TPAC, members of the community, different municipalities, I think this time around, as people are being a part of this process, they'll just learn more than they knew before. And so that's the same thing. They're just learning. So they're aware of some of the things that they look at as good projects, that they may be good projects. They may just not be eligible to be paid for by penny sales tax dollars. So, and I think that's the key that a lot of folks, when we really talk about the penny, what it is, past or future, it's about the eligibility of that particular pot of money as opposed to other pots. Projects can be good in and of themselves. It's just how can they be paid for? So they have some good projects for the city, but those projects may not be eligible to use to be paid for by penny sales tax dollars. But other programs, they could use different types of funding to pay for. So it's just having people walk through that process. And I think TPAC ultimately in this guidelines and in its projects, you may have some requests that you receive that as they get filtered out, they just may be part of the conversation that that's a good project. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet the threshold to be paid for by penny sales tax dollars.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We're revising.
All right, do we have any other questions? Okay, we will move on. Thank you again, everyone, for the updated information as well as additional information as relates to routine maintenance and bigger projects. I thank you again, Administrator Brown, for that clarification. If there's no other questions, we would move forward to the project review discussion, and that now falls with the TPAC committee. The project review discussions. Not really sure, Chairman Black. Do you want to chime in on that?
That's kind of been occurring throughout through each step.
Yes, that's what I was thinking as well. Do you have any other comments that TPAC would like to discuss that have not been discussed so far? We're moving into other business. Is there any other business we need to discuss today? Thank you, Councilwoman Cheryl English, for joining us. Did you have any questions or input at this time?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any council representation in the room that I may not, I can't really see everyone, so I don't want to overlook anyone and allow any input. No, okay.
Spread out. There's new members of the committee. Have they all been added to the email list for the meeting?
Yes, they have. They've all been added, included.
Okay.
My name is Don Van Franken, and I am a new member. And I did not get an email this time. My neighbors come out, so I got the information from him. But
who are you? What municipality?
Arcadia Lakes region.
Okay. Let me double check to see the information.
Okay. Tell me your name again. You said John.
Donald. D-O-N-A. Donald Van Branken.
Donald?
Yeah, the last name is Old Dutch name, V-A-N, another V-R-A-N-K-E-N.
Could I get your email address?
Yeah.
I do have your information, sir.
Okay.
I'll send it out, and I'll send a notice there to the transportation department to ensure that you are added to the mailing list.
right.
But I do have you on my master list that I updated, so I'll make sure that going forward that you're added to the list, please.
All right, thank you. We've already spent too much time talking about this, so.
Thank you, Chairman Black.
And
All right, okay.
I hope you feel better, Chairman Black.
All right, if there's no other discussions, our next scheduled meeting is May 20th, 2024. And we will now adjourn the meeting at 4:41. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I think she meant 1:41. But come on, 5 o'clock.
I guess what I've been telling people is this.